Do you want to achieve your max? Check out cardomax.com, owned and operated by former Navy SEAL Sean Madsen. They've got a couple different products that you guys can check out. They've got the Energy Intensifier, which is filled with BCAAs, B12, B6, and 200 milligrams of caffeine in 4 different flavors: watermelon, grape, pink raspberry, or blue raspberry rather, and pink lemonade. They also have hydration ones that has a whole bunch of stuff in it, but there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce it because I couldn't even pronounce some other stuff that I did in some prior promo codes. So the hydration stuff has raspberry and lemon lime, really good. And then if you need some help with your immune system, they also have immune boosters that are in the orange and watermelon. They have a whole bunch of vitamin C and some other things in it to help you out. And they also have a recovery solution that you can use that comes in a cherry lime and a grape. And these have a whole bunch of BCAAs and vitamins in it as well. So please go check them out. Their stuff tastes really good. I really enjoy it. I try and tailor back from the caffeine a little bit just because I find myself just dumping a whole bunch of packets in there because they taste so good. So it's nice to kind of get a variety pack, if you will, because at least I can try the Energy Intensifier in the morning or kind of when I'm dying in the afternoon. And then late at night, when I still want some flavor in my water, I throw in the immune booster or even the recovery drinks. And then who doesn't need hydration? So check them out. Promo code One's Ready at checkout will get you a discount. They support us, so we support them. We don't get anything from it, but definitely go check them out because their stuff is on fire.
And we are back and we're live. Welcome everybody to the team room. How long has it been since I hosted? I took like 2 weeks off, so I'm way out of practice.
This is going so bad.
It's going to get ugly, folks. But I think the clap was good that we had to use because of reasons. Speaking of reasons, our good friend, Sergeant Perolio, his first name's Mike, when he's actually a real person, is here with us. And as far as I can tell, he runs every important aspect of the pipeline that you're going to be going through once you get in. So without further ado, Mike, welcome to the podcast. You want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yep. So I'm a combat controller currently at Lackland Air Force Base. I'm the superintendent for what has been redubbed as B-Flight. So assessment and selection and the pre-dive course. Before that, I was at the 22nd STS for 4 years and just did the combat control JTAC thing from there, and then looking for some downtime with the family, only to find out it has been anything but here at Lackland.
Is B-Flight like another name change that we're going to have to socialize out there with everybody, or is that more wing internal business?
Yeah, it's squadron internal business. Candidates will be concerned. It'll be basic training, SWCT, Special Warfare Candidate Course, assessment and selection, pre-dive, and then the pipeline as they know.
Radical, because I've jumped the gun on a few other things, and I've actually had to cut into my own podcast and apologize for being retarded. So I don't want to do that again. So I think my first question I want to lead out right now. I know you have like a history, but I think we're talking things AATC. So you go from the operational side to AATC, and you were looking for a break. What culturally is the biggest change for you coming over to be an instructor?
So coming in when I first got here, when we were running like the combat control selection course or orientation course, whatever name you want to have for it. And like, honestly, that was pretty sweet. I got to do it a little bit. It was like 2 weeks on, maybe a month on, because you had too many students coming out of prep, and then you had about a month of prep time to kind of just do other training and go to school and do all that stuff. And then we came here and everyone's like, yeah, we're doing this. When I say ANS, it just means assessment selection, this ANS thing. And it's been this incredible culture change and beast that we've designed, but it was really just trying to put a course together that I guess all the communities were coming through now. And it's been a labor of love for sure, because it's been difficult to try and get everybody on the same page. Different people coming in, different MAGCOMs that you're trying to battle with, and then even within our own wing, trying to figure out what right looks like. And I think we're pretty close, but we're going to still continue to try and push it and keep getting it better.
Right. And I think people misunderstand that. They think like when we stand a school up or when we start a new program, like it's the military. So people have this like assumption that like, oh, okay, everything is lined out and this is going to work perfectly. And it's way more art than it is science. Like you guys have times it's weird. I remember from my time as an instructor down at Kirtland, just the way that you would organize the blocks, the students would behave differently and you get different outcomes. And sometimes those outcomes weren't what you were looking for. You were like, oh man, just by the way that we set the course up, the students aren't really progressing in the way that we want to see it. So I'm sure you guys have felt those challenges. What are some of the bigger things that you're getting after, especially in regards to like attributes based assessment? What are some things you guys are looking at on the horizon for that stuff?
So the last year has been a lot of kind of looking at, hey, how the process is and trying to marry it up with best practices from RAND. That's kind of been the biggest person coming in trying to help us redesign it. Because when we first stood it up, a lot of the events we ran, it was like, hey, well, we did this underwater event and we're just going to shove, you name the attribute, and we're going to put problem solving into underwaters. And a lot of it was us trying to take older events that we have run historically for the last 20 plus years and shove an attribute on it that just probably doesn't fit into that specific one. So the biggest thing now is having events that are actually, here's the attribute we want to assess and here is the event to do it versus here's an event we have. What's one of our 8 attributes? Okay, that's what we're assessing here. Because it is very PT based heavy. Physical fitness is one of our attributes. I still think that is king for anybody who's listening here. Is like, the more physically fit you can come, like the better off you're going to be, like period dot. Everything, anywhere in any pipeline or DoD school, physical fitness is king. But trying to figure out better ways to assess things like stress tolerance or problem solving. Like close your ears a little bit there, Aaron, but like, stress tolerance isn't just assessed in the water con. And that's one of the biggest things we're trying to work through is finding events that are on the land where, hey, what is that land-based equivalent to where we can assess water? The person who was the high school swimmer, water polo player, whatever, lifeguard, their ability to be comfortable in the water doesn't necessarily mean that they have a high stress tolerance. But if that's kind of the main area that we assess it, we miss out on an opportunity to see how they perform, on the land. For example, we had one student candidate. He actually came from my hometown in California and was a stud in the pool. I was like, yeah, he's gonna crush it, because that's still one of the biggest determining factors is where you're at in the pool is kind of because it's still water heavy. The next course is still pre-dive and dive school after that. So we got to have some level of competency there, so we're not spending too much time on training. But ended up quitting on one of the other land events. So how are we able to get after that a little bit more instead of just, it's stress tolerance is only seen in the water, because it could be totally different.
Right. And newsflash, everybody, the Army has a completely ground-based assessment. They produce some of the most high-class special operators that the world has ever seen, right? Like, while water is the great equalizer, you're not going to catch me on the PJ trap. Good look, PO. I like how you tried to bait me there. I'm not going to bite. I think water is great, but I think you do need to see, like, man, under a ruck and walking and trying to like navigate terrain features and those things on your feet for extended periods of time. Those are valuable. And that's where you can really chip away at somebody's personality. I can be under the water and I can be uncomfortable, but guess what? Max time, that's only going to happen for about 3 minutes. When we're talking about a 24-hour movement under some weight in the woods, that's different. And that's looking at different attributes. And man, I'm about that land-based life. So can you give us another example of exactly what you were just talking about? Like, we tried to shoehorn certain events into attributes. Can you give me the flip side? Can you say, here's an attribute that we were looking at, so we designed this event to look at it? If you can't, pull the curtain back, I don't want you to put yourself out. Give me an example of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. So I think like there's all the events. If you look at any assessment selection, they're the students sometimes call them puzzles or team week. But those events were specifically designed to put you into small teams and give you a bunch of equipment. It looks like a pile of crap, but essentially there's going to be a mission with that. We're going to tell you, hey, here's what you need to do. You need to figure out a way to put it all together and move it from point A to point B, or some of it may not even be a movement thing. We just look at to see how you're able to, communicate or whatever it may be. And that's the beauty, I think, of assessments and selections. We can be doing something that's totally PT based. But truthfully, we could be assessing an attribute that isn't physical fitness. You may think it's physical fitness, or you may think that we're looking for you to communicate, but we might be looking at problem solving or teamwork or something else. So it's just being able to plug and play that. But we have a specific phases in training where we kind of heavily weigh other attributes more than others. Some events where we're looking at things that is physical. And that's not to say that like the way that we've done things for the last 20 years isn't wrwrong. Like I think the way that we have done things has been great. We've produced some phenomenal operators. And I think the Air Force Special Operations side of the house, we've been able to do some pretty cool things and have access to a lot of different stuff that I think other services haven't been able to. And we haven't had a formal assessment selection. I think the best part about what we've stood up is that it really is designed to, those one or two people that you have on your team where you're like, this guy's a total asshole. Like, yeah, he's a stud. He's physically fit, but they're low trust. Like you can't trust them to do things. That's really what ANSs are designed to try and weed out. Hey, here's these people that have the core raw material that we can get them where they need to be. And they fit in a team. Like they're willing to work well with their team. They're not assholes. Like, I think that is the most important part of an ANS and what we've been able to see, because we'll do peer evals and they may not say it to each other's face, but you can definitely find out who the outliers are who don't belong pretty quickly by peer evals.
Oh, absolutely. And peer evals are one of my favorite things to do. But I think it's important because as an outsider, you kind of look at our pipeline and any pipeline really and just say, hey, they're just there to beat people down and do nothing but PT, do a little bit of math in terms of dive physics or something like that. But it's not like you're just there to beat people. And that's not the case at all. I mean, you've already said that you guys bring in RAND to do studies. I know they did a study a couple of years ago, and I think they're doing one right now. And I mean, that's where we kind of got the attributes from, or at least able to, articulate the attributes that we're looking for. And that's not to say that, the old NDOC and combat control selection course and all that kind of stuff didn't have science-based stuff in it. But I mean, you guys aren't just out there freaking beating people. There is science behind what you guys are doing. And I think that's important to highlight just because I believe people think that it's just, hey man, it's just nothing but PT and you get through it. That's not really a question. That's more of a comment, but go for it.
It's super.
There was a period at the end of that sentence, not a question mark.
Yeah, it's super frustrating because I think from those going through it, those observing it, and then those from our community who come down and see it. And I mean, you came down and got to see it, Peaches, and I think you have a different understanding of it. But and I've told that to everybody who comes in the room, and I've gotten to the point where the tact isn't there all the time. And it's like, okay, it just gets frustrating because it's like, you can't come and watch one event or watch our one WaterCon event and think all there is to know about ANS. There's, until you're showing up at, 0 dark 30, for lack of a better word, to see what's going on, the stuff that happens behind the scenes, the instructors, professionalism that like my guys have when they run this and the pride they take in it. You really have no idea what ANS is. Like it's so much more than just one WaterCon session that most people come and see, because water's the thing that's, for whatever reason, that's the thing that gets people excited. So they want to come see it. And then you watch the same WaterCon session 3-4 times in a row and you're like, this is pretty boring. And, but you go and see some other events and ultimately there's some high intensity times and it's in there, but for the most part, it's controlled chaos, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And I think that's the other part. Yes, it is physically demanding, and I think it should be kind of really for two reasons, right? So we want to have a reach back moment. Hey, this is the most awful part of my training pipeline. And if I can get through this, I can get through anything. That's what we expect for all of our pipelines before. We just try and do it all up front now, and I do think that was of the INDOC did a ton of things right. Like the guys they have there, and you guys the Mr. Capo Biancos, the Mr. Kilbrides, the guys who've been there forever and you guys know and love. like they're masterminds of this stuff, and they do bring a ton of experience to the table. But that's ultimately, hey, we're trying to give them that moment that they can reach back and say, holy crap, that was insane. I was sleepy, hungry, sore, broken down, but I was still able to execute. We want them to have that. The other thing is yeah, come as physically fit as you want. It really doesn't matter. Like, fitness is your defense mechanism. And when we can remove that, now we get to see who that real person is. So who are you when you don't have your Tempur-Pedic mattress, all your, the chow hall, the stretching and all that stuff, and it's as raw as it can possibly get? Like, that's what we want to see. And I think that's like how I equate it to a lot of students. SWIC candidate course, that is your pre-deployment training. Like, you're going to go home, you're going to train, you're going to do all your stuff. You're going to be tired now. ANS, that's your deployment. That's the mission. Like, we take all those niceties of being able to take a knee and figure it out away, and we put you in intense environments. You're wet, cold, tired, hungry the entire time.
No, exactly right. And you have a I guess a football team. It's larger than a football team size of Cadre just for ANS. And I'm talking about anywhere from, actual combat controllers, PJs, SR, TAC-Ps, to retired operators, to folks that have come over from, we'll just say the Army side and the Navy side of the house too, that have been running their selections, their ANSs for years. And so there's all these experts, and there's definitely, and I noticed that when I came and observed, there are some differences in of opinion on how an ANS should be run, whether it's hey, as a Cadre member, I am perfectly science. I'm not course correcting or anything like that. But then there's the other aspect of like, hey, maybe this person doesn't realize they're doing something wrong. It's interesting as an observer for me to see the different mindsets and mentalities based on ANS. So you mind describing some of the different variations of what your team is comprised of at ANS in regards to Cadre?
Yeah, so primarily the way it works is I'll have one course chief. We just swapped out. So the course chief we had, he just went up to the 2-2. The new one we had, he's a PJ from the 2-6. So he just took over. He's getting after it. We have the main core of our shift, which is the active duty guys. We're supposed to have 17, including the course chief. We're still kind of building up. We're getting a ton of bodies in. So, but right now we're sitting on around 10 instructors, including the course chief and a GS. From there, we have 16 when they come in, but yeah, all different walks of life. You name the assessment course, they've worked it. As far, and it goes as long out as like one of the individuals we have used to work on the astronaut assessment program. So these guys have tons and tons of experience, and have been every conflict, since before I was born, to be completely honest. But we got a ton of experience. On top of that, we have, so that's kind of the main Cadre assessment core. Supplementing that, we have 3 medics at least at any given time we're running an event. We'll have human performance techs. They do all the data wearable technologies. We're assessing heart rate, body temperature, and then we'll have potentially, depending on the event, a flight doc hanging out or an athletic trainer in the event that something happens. It's 40 plus people to run an ANS, and then we'll go into running 2 shifts. So we'll have to split that up and make it work. And we get to points where it's the Cadre working 24/7. So we have to have a somewhat decent work rest cycle, but it's pretty brutal on the Cadre to do that every time as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think anybody that thinks being an instructor in that type of environment is easy, it's like the students leave and then you get a new crop of students that come in, like as an instructor, you're not doing all the same things, but I don't want to say it's Groundhog Day or it's that bad or whatever. Like, there are bright moments of being an instructor, but it's pretty tough. But that's not what I was going to talk about. The human performance techs, like that, all that data that you guys bring in, like the heart rate and the core temp and all that other stuff. What is all that data used for, and does it help weed out for the selection process?
No, not necessarily. I think of it more as like an early warning system. Obviously, here in South Texas, where it's, right now it's 90 degrees, 6 o'clock. It's just to prevent the heat casualty type stuff. As we get closer to the summer, we'll start having quite a few of those a class. Really, hey, this guy's core temp is raising. They'll let the cadre know and the medics know, and they'll kind of just go observe that candidate to see what they, if they're displaying any signs and symptoms. Because you'll see it. They'll be at the back of the pack and they'll be stumbling all over the place. And I do advise my staff to be, overly cautious on that. We want to give every candidate the best time, but when it comes to the safety concern, it's better to pull the trigger sooner rather than later, I think, to get them higher care. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, if I'm in the pool and I freak out, and, as an old weather guy, I'm prone to do that, anyway. And you pull me out of the pool and I'm freaking out and I'm acting like I'm passing out, and you check my O2, and my O2 is like, my SAT is good. Like, kind of gives you some data points, right? Like on where that student is at and whether or not they're legitimate.
Yeah, we're not quite there yet as far as like being able to assess like a candidate's, RPE compared to what their heart rate is. Like, I think that could be in the future, but we're not quite there yet. We have used it pre-dive when I was the course chief there, and essentially what happened was the student's like heart rate just jacked up like crazy. And when he got out of the pool, because he had a weird H-lock incident, we found his heart rate was jacked up, and then they were able to actually kind of compare that with the Smartabase tech that the student was wearing. And we were able to give it to the docs, and they were able to kind of figure out an assessment and just run some more tests to figure out what was going on. But it was kind of weird anomaly situation.
Yeah. No,
but nothing that yet. Not where like, hey, this person's freaking out and they're faking it. The O2 sat definitely helps us figure that out and identify scurvs, as we like to call them.
Yeah. Well, and it's another point. Like, we're not actually trying to hurt anybody. We're just trying to peel back the layers and see who they are. But what are all the things that we measure? Because I was at the prep course a while ago, and it's fascinating, all the equipment and everything that we hook up to these students. Can you go down the list of all the things that we're measuring on these folks to ensure that they're performing the best that they can, and also for safety?
Yeah, so we do a lot more of it, I think, happens in SWIC than what we do in ANS, because of the amount of time that we are, like, the candidates are time under tension, all that stuff. Like, I don't need to know what their recovery level is, because I know that they're smashed. Like, I know that their physical fitness level and the recovery is down. I don't need a urine test or a ready band to tell me that, because I'm inducing that, right? So in prep, I think it's very useful because they're able to identify, hey, here's where my HRV is, here's my omega wave reading. But yeah, it's a long list. So they track sleep. They'll do hydration testing, so some sort of urine test in the morning. From there, they'll do the omega wave readings, so that just seeing, hey, how their CNS is firing throughout the entire day. They'll be pucked up to kind of see what their levels are. We call it pucked up. That's just where they're wearing the chest strap that's checking heart rate variability. And at the end of every single workout, they'll be kind of, hey, this is where you're at before you started. This is where you're at after the end of the workout. We're not at the point yet where we're changing what the programming is. Why they're in a course, why they're outside of a course. Absolutely. I think that's the future. We should, we should be doing that at the units, I think, where it's, hey, here's the workout you did. Your recovery is crap. We should probably do this workout to get you better, and modify programs for candidates who are failing to meet whatever criteria. But yeah, they're hooked up like Radio Shack. We do a ton of stuff to them. They're basically all combat controls already, with all the radios and wires they have on.
With all the wires, all they need is a couple antennas, and they'd be man. The difference between what we had, and again, like, we're all early adopters here, like, you are too. That's why we wanted to bring you on. But some old guys look at the process now, and they're like, well, I didn't have this and I didn't have this, and they kind of get mad. We get excited by that. Man, we're talking about candidates wearing wearables. We're talking about being able to real-time track those things that are, just like you said earlier, you don't want an asshole inside the team room. It's kills the morale of the team room. And now we're actually building an assessment that focuses on a holistic approach. Like, are they okay in the team room? Yeah, we're going to always look to see if they're physically fit. Yes, we're going to check grit and stress tolerance and teamwork and all those other things. But we're moving to a point now where we get to look at these guys like Peaches and I just laugh, like the young 3 levels that we've gotten into the 2-2. We get them and we're just like, man, you have had a world-class organization to grow up in. We're trying to keep pace with them. They're able to take on more information quickly. They're able to orient to new scenarios. It's wild to see the product, kind of the output of what the input is, because we all know, what that raw material looks like. But you guys are innovating in a different way to move forward. Are there any other big rocks, like when you start looking at great power competition, or when we look at the emerging kind of AFSC of special reconnaissance, are you guys recruiting in a different way, or are you guys presenting information in a different way in that initial phase in order to support the new generation, for lack of a better word, in order to support the new generation's like way of learning?
I think so. I know that that's like a huge emphasis for the wing is, how we all learn and how we give information to students. I think that's like one of the unfortunate parts about like coming to be an instructor where I'm at, is that I haven't had a whole lot of time to do that action where I'm teaching you a skill set that could potentially, help you in ground combat. Yeah, I did the pre-dive thing for a year, and that was great, given, being able to see the person who sucked at the pool on day one, and by the end, they're swimming around like crazy and they're able to do all the events, and seeing them have that accomplishment. But I know that there is a ton of change of that stuff going on in SWIC, the candidate course, to identify ways to, hey, how do we better teach them information, prepare them? But what you're getting after is, hey, this is the new generation. I can't speak to that at the courses I run. It's still very, very physical, based, performance based. Hey, here's the event. So I think a lot of the instructors, they definitely have come in and have a little bit more, like, as we're getting new instructors in who haven't been here for the whole time, like we're all more open-minded into the process. And it's great to hear that when they're getting to the teams that they're fitting in well. That's a lot of the feedback we haven't gotten at our level. I don't think people give these candidates who are making it through A&S and the current process enough credit. It's I think a lot of confirmation bias for sure at the other courses.
Yeah, I would not disagree. Like I've always been impressed with, seeing your spaces from, I saw prep when it was the infancy of the first prep, and now to see where prep is, and to see where extortion is, and to see where the special warfare training wing is, like it's just straight up awe-inspiring, right? Like we want bigger, faster, stronger, harder to kill AFSPECWAR airmen, and you guys are doing that. What are some changes that you see, especially when we're talking about like TAC P, especially when we're talking about where we're going in the future for kind of LISCO operations? Do you see assessment and selection or the early pipeline changing to meet those demands as well?
I think so. The biggest changes that we're probably going to see is there will be some sort of merger with the candidate course and A&S. It'll be kind of one initial course of initial entry. I think it'll look a little bit more similar to, hey, yep, we're prepping, we're looking at attributes in that first portion, and then we kind of get into the A&S meat potatoes crucible, for lack of a better word, type of an event where, hey, it's, this is the grit test, if you will. I also see a common skills course probably coming to be the next big thing, where we're all training under the same roof, and a lot of the tactics that we're learning, whether that be land nav and shooting and all that, being gear common to all, which is a good thing, because you look at a lot of the other services and it's not, we're very unique in that, CCT and SR have always been together and done that, but our PJs and our controllers at SR are two different MAGCOMs and have two different training levels. And it changes from squadron to squadron. So right. We
can I get you to actually explain? I want to pause here and get you to actually explain what you mean when you say a common skills course, because I think this is one of my favorite future initiatives, and I love it. And I'd like for you to float the idea out there and like really talk about, like, when you say a common skills course, what do you mean?
So from what they're kind of trying to sell, I think what the idea is to, hey, we do land nav at Combat Control School, and we do land nav at the Paramed or PJU. I don't know, what do you guys call it? I've heard
The
people
apprentice
don't like
course.
PJU. Okay, the
Yeah,
apprentice course.
Yeah, the apprentice course. Yep.
Yep. So you'll do, land nav at this course, land nav at another course. You'll do tactics at this course and tactics at another course. The idea is to, in order to streamline that process, bring those similar skill sets that we all learn, whether jumping, AIEs, all of that stuff, doing them at the same time so that everybody's the same level. And then, the apprentice courses have different skill sets that you get one, and then the controllers and the SR guys. And I know you guys just wrote the whole SR course, and which is, part of having to change things all the time, but to some extent, it does make sense. Hey, if we want it to be this unilateral, maneuver element that the Air Force has capacity to deploy to different places and conduct whatever the mission sets are that we're looking to do, it would make sense that we have training where we train together. And as far as efficiency, we have the same skill sets, SOPs.
Oh, I'm pretty excited about that. If this is the way it's going, and I'm really glad that that's not an initiative that has been lost on anybody, because I know that certain ideas get thrown out there or suggestions get thrown out there, and oftentimes they're hit with like, hey, great idea, maybe not right now, just because of, we're in a continually declining constrained environment, both fiscally and manning wise. So that's actually good to hear, because I think that is actually the way forward to get everybody on the same page and to, in the long run, cut cost, even though the upfront cost will be a little bit higher. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to go from, so we've spoken to some folks that you're familiar with, and because I don't know the time frame of when these will come out, but we have already talked to Tech Sergeant Spencer Boss about SWCC, and she is the kind of SME at SWCC. But I'd like to get kind of your perspective, or you to lay out from completion of SWCC going into ANS. Can you walk us through that?
So you're looking for, so they go through SWCC, and then what the downtime looks like between ANS and SWCC, correct?
Yeah. They're told, hey, you're done with SWCC on, let's just call it a Friday, and then what happens the very next day or later that day?
Week of SWCC, the biggest issue I think with like the way the construct is we have different avenues to get to ANS. It used to be 6 different ways people could get there. Now we've narrowed it down to 4 different ways. So you'll have our SWCC candidates, so all the people who are going through the current SWCC class. You'll have our special work devs, so anybody who was a washback or was unable to start the last ANS, that's where they've been in kind of holdover, waiting to start the next course. And then we have our officer candidates who are coming in, whether that be the Crows or the Stows, and they're both coming from, all kinds of different places, but we'll just call it 2 different avenues for the time being. So that last week is all administrivia for the SWCC students. So they'll get a candidate fitness test. The dev will also give their candidates a fitness test as well, just making sure everybody has that baseline level of conditioning before they come in. It's really about a weekend. So we expect a lot of students who are coming in to be here no later than like the Thursday prior to the course starting on Monday. We'll drop off, give them the packing list, and say, hey, here's all the things you need to have ready over the weekend. Monday morning, that's what we call phase 0. That's our 3 days to do a lot of the in-processing. So you'll get kind of your rules of engagement brief, expectations, your schedule. And we do a lot of our initial psych testing during those first 3 days, and medical scrubbing. We'll identify students who have potentially something that disqualifies them or makes them unable to start. Hey, maybe they're hiding some sort of injury because they really want to start, but ANS is certainly not the course you want to start with your nursing and injury. But those first 3 days is where we accomplish a lot of that. So while the Cadre are doing all of our calibration training, making sure that we're all on the same page before the course starts, the candidates are doing psych interviews, psych testing. Anybody who had received a OFT is getting an OFT for the officers who came in a little bit late, just to accomplish that, to get them starting. And then, the course has started on Monday, but the physical assessment and selection portion will start on that Thursday. So it's a quick turn. They graduate. I think prep tries to kick them out of there Thursday, because they get their their newest students in on that Friday. So it's a machine. Everything's on that 8-week cycle here.
That is for sure, because you guys have schedules, and that really is a well-oiled machine. One thing I just wanted to clarify, because my internet kind of dropped out, and I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Cross trainees are now going to SWIC. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is that all of them, or is that by exception?
That's all of them. They've all been going through. I think that's the best thing for everybody. It's twofold, and
agree.
Like SWIC allows you that ability, like especially with COVID going on, a lot of guys and gals were coming in who were retrainees, and because they weren't having access to pools, so they'd come in, and day one of A&S, we were doing WaterCon. They were unsuccessful, and it was ugly. So we're like, hey, well, let's make sure we put them through the prep course, so that way they're more successful. And I do think, like, I know you guys already had talked to Spencer, but like you get what you put out of into the SWIC course. It's a golden opportunity. And what you said earlier is, all this stuff that we're doing now, and the strength coaches, the wearables, like that's all stuff. I think when I went through the pipeline, it's like, I wish we had a strength coach who would ran our workouts, and not, tech sergeant, whatever, who
right.
just has us doing these dumb workouts, and we're at least trying to get better. It doesn't matter when you come through, it takes what it takes to get to the end. But I do think we are training guys and gals smarter. Oh, yeah. But it's so everybody's going through prep now. The only people who do not go through prep initially, like our washbacks, they're all have already gone through, they're all prep grads, but it's the officers. And that is a huge risk, I think, to my training. People were coming into the course, and we're putting them into this high intensity course, and they were not successful. So definitely doesn't set the student up for success, and it doesn't set the cadre up for success as far as safety goes.
I mean, it's a pretty fast ramp up, right? Like if you're coming off the couch, so to speak, straight into A&S, I mean, you guys don't slow roll it for very long. If I'm tracking correctly, like I've come out and seen a few things, but it's prep is a pretty decent glide slope up to A&S. And if you're just coming off the street or a regular job from behind a computer, you get thrown into the meat grinder. It's got to be, it's got to be tough.
Yeah. So in INDOC, or comparing it to what INDOC was, and like if you do everything right and you're the candidate that's going through the candidate course, and you're like chomping at the bit, and you're trying to do the best you can, and you leave there, you're leaving the candidate course at about a week for INDOC standard for a relative concern. And then you go into A&S, and A&S is right around, nothing the candidates do in A&S is something that, there's a few events obviously that are a little bit different, and we want it because we're trying to elicit specific attributes for those events. So you probably haven't done those, but to the capacity of your physical fitness, like all the training you need does occur in the candidate course for you to be successful at A&S. And then pre-dive picks right back up off where those students left SWIC at, and we ramp them up to kind of that final stage. So 8-week INDOC standards, passing all the SOCOM requirements to go to dive school.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to talk about, you mentioned the old pipeline when your random tech sergeant, beret wearer is running the workouts. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is in the old system, a lot of the pipeline was dependent upon the personalities of the people that were there. So it's not like we had a very consistent product as far as teaching. And so when you talk and the professionalism of your instructors, can you walk the dog on that a little bit? Like, what does that mean, and how does that lead to the consistency that we see?
So the biggest thing that we accomplish is we do a lot of kind of behind the scenes training and calibration. We'll bring our lead psych docs in. They'll run us through all the attributes. What's an opinion versus what's an observation. That was kind of when we initially started this. Took a bunch of people who was like, well, I went through this process, and this is what I think is right or wrong. I mean, you had Gavin on earlier on a couple of years ago, and taking all of us who didn't, we're like, what the heck is going on? Like I was guilty of it. Absolutely. We'd watch candidates. You're like, this person sucks. And you put that in your comments and be like, and then you get to the boards, and the group commander would be like, what are you guys writing? Like, this is crap, and we're like whether we're trying to select a student or non-select a student, like our data wasn't very consistent. We've matured a ton as an organization, especially as a course, and making sure that we we put in observations. Hey, the candidate was failing to do push-ups, for X, Y, and Z reasons, instead of saying, yeah, the candidate's just unphysically fit, does not belong here. Like, those are two different statements. When one has a lot of emotion tied to it, one of them has, it's an observation. Candidate was not doing push-ups, X, Y, and Z, and, we move forward. But so we'll do that. We'll go over the observations. We'll go over how the events are run. Big things that we do during that calibration phase, as well as a lot of like the safety stuff. So, hey, it's what happens if you have an H-lock. We run all of our instructors through safety swimmer stuff. So for all the candidates who are terrified, who are listening to this, and you think you're gonna die in the pool, like, Big Brother's gonna be there for you. Don't worry. We'll get you out.
Perfect.
The safety blanket. The safety blanket.
Yes.
I love it, man.
Yes.
That's nice.
And then on top of that, a lot of heat casualty training. And it's really just because we get RFFs in. ANS is different. So when we get people in here who don't, all they're how terrible the instructors were and how miserable they were the entire time. And I think oftentimes we convince ourselves how miserable it was, when in hindsight, maybe it may or may not have been. And we have this misconceived notion that we were just like Ironmen going through, and we weren't scurving ourselves. Like, we were students. Like, everybody did. You put your butt up in the air when you got an opportunity to. Like, if you tell me you didn't, like, you're a liar.
Never.
So,
Never.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can trust somebody that never scurved before. You know what I mean?
So,
like, if you've never been around the corner of a building where everybody else is getting smoked and you're just like not putting out at all, I don't know if we can be friends, man. Like, you have to do that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's parts of it that I get it. Hey, from the students, but a lot of it is what we're just trying to indoctrinate, is that, that never quit attitude. Because I still think that's important to have, but also just having a little bit of humility as well. Like, the candidates didn't get a choice in this process. Like, they just want to do the job that you wear the beret and say that you do right now. Like, that ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what they want. So try and make it the best we can for them, given the confines of what we currently have.
And that's the burden of the instructor. You have to be that middle ground between a bunch of dudes on our side, where we're like, hey, listen, we thought this was the most terrible, and we have an opinion on how this should go. And a whole new generation of people that are like, I just want to be like you. And you're the person that's in the middle, trying to like please those two masters. You know what I mean? Like, you literally are the bridge. Like, because the candidates that want to come in now, yeah, they're young. It's these darn kids and this Generation Z, whatever. But they have a righteous task, man. They want to be a controller. They want to be SR. They want to be a PJ. They want to be a special warfare officer. Like, that's righteous. For all of those people that are looking to get in right now, you have seen it, hundreds, maybe thousands of times, passes and failures and whatever. So what right looks like. The right candidate, it's hard to explain. And I know you can point it out. If there's 100 candidates, you can see the one person doing it right. But if you were to tell the people listening that are getting into this thing, this crazy ANS deal, that's the ticket to ride the pipeline, here's how you're successful, what would you tell those candidates?
Yeah. So number one is come here as physically fit as you possibly can. Like, that is the ultimate goal. When you get to SWIC, and I mean, like you said it best, right? Like, the pipeline there's never been a better time to come through the pipeline than right now, because at every single point, there's somebody there to provide you some mentorship and some help, whether that be, you're struggling in the pool, you're struggling on land. Like, we have active duty operators who are taking time from the operational community to go and be recruiters and provide training. We have retired operators who are doing the teacher field developer stuff, who are writing workout plans. There's information, it's everywhere. You just Google, hey, selection prep workout. You could even the 724, which is the tier 1 asset, like, you can go on their website and you can pull the workout that they recommend for you to do the prep for their program. Like, all that stuff is readily available. And then when you get to basic training, like, no other flights in basic training have coaches coming over and running your workouts every morning. Like so what whatever the workout is, like, yeah, you may not be what you're doing before you came in, but it's sure better than what everybody else is doing. I guarantee that. And then when you get to prep or SWIC, take advantage of that. Like, because the thing I hate when gals get to ANS, they say, yeah, I wasn't prepared for this. And it's like, well, what were we doing? Like, that's a poor excuse, because we have all these things in place for the candidates to be successful. So they're like, yeah, I didn't train well enough for WaterCon, and that just leads me down that road. Like lie yourself, because you got WaterCon 5 days a week over there at the candidate course, and now you're coming here and you're unable to execute. And maybe that's just, that overall stress. But to get back to it, come here as physically fit as you possibly can. That is goal number one. Goal number two is to have a sense of urgency. So when we're telling you to move out on a task, you're moving out on the task. The next one is team before self, and like those sense of urgency, team before self. Like you could do those two things, you're probably going to be successful. Poor teammates, like they don't get selected because we don't want those people around the community. If so, doesn't matter how physically fit you are at that point. Like if you're toxic on your team, you're going to get voted off the island quick. So to wrap it up, physically fit, sense of purpose, sense of urgency, and then team before self. Those are your three keys to have before you get here.
I dig it. And I notice a common theme between everybody that we have on when we ask them their advice, and that's people inside the community and outside the community. So Mike, this isn't necessarily a question, just more of a statement, which I have a habit of doing, I noticed, but I guess it's one of those chief things. I don't know. So
you get to message now. What was my favorite quote from AETC command chief? He was like, Trent, I'm not going to ask the question that you asked me. I'm going to answer the question I wish you did. Yeah. And that's what you get to do. You just get to take stuff and just.
No, basically all I wanted to say was thanks for what you've done down there at ANS and pre-dive. And actually, I know you spent several years down there. So thanks for what you're doing down there. Thanks for the instructors that are down there right now that are helping shape the future of special warfare. And thanks to the contractors and all the other instructors down there, because the work that you guys are doing down there is extremely important. And though we have felt it, we've never stopped feeling the impact that you guys have down there. But now that we're starting to receive new airmen that have gone through the pipeline that, Trent, a lot of those guys have gone there and built, like, we're really happy with the product that we're getting. So genuinely, thanks for doing what you guys are doing.
Awesome.
And Mike, I just want to go back to the beginning. I told you to introduce yourself, and you're a humble guy, but I want to start with, I want to make the end of this about you. So the question is, why did you choose and go combat control?
Well, I chose it because initially I was security forces when I first came in, and not to say that it's bad. Combat control is just better, but it's, I wanted to be able to be a part of something that was pretty big and be able to have some significance in it and be the guy. Like when you look at all the stuff with combat controllers, it's, they're the guy. They go on the team, they're involved in every process from, the mission drop into final exfil and effects on the battlefield. So I said, that's what I want to do. I told Peaches this the other day, but so Trent, you were at my assessment course. Yeah. Love, you and I, we worked that PJ retraining one. And then Peaches came out and watched the assessment course that I ran. So, it's weird that all four of us have crossed paths at some point in an assessment selection type way. But it's, for all the students and guys or gals who are thinking about coming over here, like nowhere else. I tell all the students this when they get selected after ANS, nowhere else in the Air Force do you get to do some of the stuff that we get to do. You're jumping out of planes, helicopters, you're shooting, dropping bombs, say whatever it may be. Like, it's incredible. Everybody else, they do their deployments and they come home and they work at an office. Like, yeah, we do some office time and administrivia, but 90% of it is going out and just doing awesome training. And we get paid pretty well to just, do really cool stuff. Like I get excited. Right. I haven't done it in 4 years, but it's like, you just think about it. You're like, oh, it's awesome. Like
I'm doing AIEs. I'm doing AIEs next week. I'm terrified. I'm just scared. Just some simple stuff. Like there's orcas out. It's Oh, it's going to be terrifying.
Yeah, I remember like some of the best times I ever had were out at the 2-2, and we were, the Army always, the 160th guys would always hit up the other services before they hit us to get the summer months water AIEs, and we get mid-December American Lake, 60, cold water. But it was some of the it's just people will pay thousands of dollars to be able to go out and just get picked up by a helicopter, push a boat out the back, and jump out with all your buddies and look like a bunch of buffoons. But there's nothing like it, and I never got to do anything like that in security forces, and I don't know a lot of other communities. So yes, when you're going through the training and it's hard, do not get short-minded over it. The juice is worth the squeeze on the other side. It's a great community to be a part of, for sure.
Well, I couldn't have wrapped this up better if I tried. So Mike, I appreciate it. You are definitely the guy. I think we might have to have you on again to talk about some of your experiences and other things, outside of AATC, but can't thank you enough for coming on and for everything that you're doing. And for everybody else out there, like, subscribe, leave comments, make fun of Aaron's hair because it's fake. And we'll catch y'all next time. Train hard.
Later.
Later.